My fiancé sent a message. I have the most incredible news. I finally booked our dream honeymoon to Paris. I replied, I have news too. I'm on the federal no-fly list. Have been since I was 20. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. 12 hours of absolute silence. I spent those 12 hours on the deck of a deep-water oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico, freezing wind biting through my coveralls, listening to the deafening grind of the drills. When you work offshore, you have a lot of time to think, a lot of time to stare out at black water and put pieces together. I'm Ethan. When I was 20, my wallet was stolen out of a locker at a community center. It took 6 months for me to realize someone had used my identity to front a shell corporation moving contraband hardware across the Canadian border. By the time I found out, the federal government had already built a file on me. 3 federal appeals denied, tens of thousands in legal fees. I got a permanent, irrevocable ban from international travel. I told Megan this on our 3rd date. We were sitting in a crowded coffee shop, and I laid it all out. It's a heavy thing to drop on someone, telling them their life with you will have borders. She cried. She reached across the table, took my hands, and said we could just travel domestically. She said she loved me anyway. That was 3 years ago. Her reply finally came through right as my shift ended. Babe, Homeland Security makes mistakes. Background checks glitch. This is our trip. I sat on the edge of my bunk. The steel walls of my cabin vibrated with the generator's hum. I didn't feel angry yet. I just felt a cold, sinking weight in my stomach. I sent one text. Whose passport is on the booking? My phone rang instantly. I answered it, and Megan was sobbing so hard the audio was clipping. Ethan, please, she gasped. I've been completely loyal to you. I swear on my father's life. Megan, I said, keeping my voice dead level over the noise of the rig. I can't leave the continent. It's federally impossible. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Maybe they cleared your name without telling you. It happens all the time. Just look it up online. Miracles happen. She actually believed I was an idiot. 8 months out here surrounded by freezing salt water and rusted metal, and she thought my brain had rotted out. While I was waiting for her text, I had already opened my laptop. We shared a password manager. It took me 30 seconds to log into the airline portal. 2 first-class tickets to Charles de Gaulle Airport. $18,000. Seat 2A and 2B. Booked under her name and someone named Connor. I read the name out loud into the receiver. Slow, syllable by syllable. Connor Hayes. Dead silence on the line. The fake crying vanished instantly. Who is Connor, Megan? Nothing, your spin class instructor Connor, I said, the pieces snapping together. The one who helped you pack my winter gear into the storage unit when I shipped out because he had a truck. Her voice shifted. The panic was gone, replaced by something ice-cold and vicious. Something I had never heard in 3 years. Fine. You want the raw truth? She said, her tone dripping with contempt. You were freezing in the ocean. Connor was here, keeping me warm in our bed. You can't even take me on a proper European vacation, Ethan. What the hell did you expect from me? Loyalty? Loyalty doesn't buy me luxury experiences. Your massive offshore hazard pay does. The one paying for the penthouse lease, your designer clothes, and the country club membership. I gripped the edge of the mattress. The one paying for the 5-star suite, the private yacht charters, the $900 dinners at Nobu in April. Remember April? I was working a 90-hour shift in a storm. You were at a resort in Miami. Ethan, listen to me. She snapped. I already contacted my broker. I moved the remaining cash from our joint account to a secure offshore trust. You can't touch a single dime. My chest tightened. You can't do that. I need those funds to pay for Declan's physical therapy. My brother Declan had been in a severe car wreck 2 years ago. The hazard pay from the rig was the only thing keeping him in a specialized spinal rehab facility. Megan knew this. She knew exactly what that money was for. Then go call Connor. She sneered. Connor makes $15 an hour spotting weights at the gym. Sounds like your brother is going to need a miracle. She hung up. I immediately logged into my banking app. The loading circle spun for 3 seconds. Then the dashboard loaded. Available balance. Cents. My vision blurred. $80,000. Gone. Sweat broke out on the back of my neck. I tried to transfer funds from savings. Empty. She had completely drained us. But I wasn't even close to finished. Because Megan had been so focused on securing her exit, she had completely forgotten one crucial detail. Her family respected the hell out of me. Her dad, Holt Fairfax, treated me like the son he never had. Before my offshore contract started, Holt and I spent every other Sunday in his garage, restoring a 1969 Mustang. Her mother, Adele, invited me to family dinners even when Megan was out of town. They were good, grounded people who happened to sit on top of a massive commercial real estate empire. And more importantly, Megan's massive corporate succession ceremony was in 2 weeks. Holt was stepping down as CEO of Fairfax Holdings. Megan was scheduled to be publicly crowned as his replacement at a massive retirement gala. 500 industry guests confirmed. Investors, board members, the mayor. I didn't pack a bag. I walked straight up to the rig supervisor's office. I told him I had a catastrophic family emergency involving my brother's medical trust. I wasn't lying. He took one look at my face and approved a compassionate leave on the spot. I was on the next supply helicopter to the Louisiana coast. From there, I booked a one-way domestic flight to Chicago. I didn't text her. I didn't call the bank. I just sat in the window seat watching the clouds, feeling a terrifying quiet clarity settle over me. I landed on a Tuesday afternoon. The gala was scheduled for that evening. I took a cab straight to the downtown skyscraper that housed Fairfax Holdings. I didn't go home to change. I walked through the massive glass revolving doors wearing my dark jeans, a plain jacket, and my boots. The lobby was already swarming with caterers and event staff setting up for the reception. String quartets were warming up. Waiters were polishing champagne flutes. I bypassed the reception and took the private executive elevator to the top floor. The doors slid open to the boardroom suite. It was dead quiet up here. I walked straight into the glass-walled executive boardroom. Holt and Adele were sitting at the far end of the massive mahogany table, going over the evening's run of show documents. They were having a quiet, private moment before the chaos downstairs began. Holt looked up. His face broke into a massive grin. Ethan, good lord. He stood up, walking around the table to give me a massive bear hug. He clapped me on the back, hard. Megan didn't mention you were flying back early. This is a hell of a surprise. Adele smiled warmly, setting her reading glasses on the table. You look exhausted, sweetheart. Did you come straight from the airport? She doesn't know I'm here, I said. My voice sounded hollow in the cavernous room. Can we sit down? I need to show you both something critical. Holt's smile faltered. He looked at my eyes, then looked at Adele. They took their seats, their expressions shifting to deep concern. I was placed on the federal no-fly list a decade ago, I explained quietly, leaning forward forward and resting my hands on the polished wood. Identity theft. I can never leave the country. I told Megan this 3 years ago. Yesterday, she booked an $18,000 honeymoon to France. Holt's brow furrowed, but she told the board, "I've been on the rig for 8 months." I interrupted. Megan took $80,000 from our joint accounts yesterday. Money that was supposed to pay for Declan's spinal rehab. But that's not why I'm here. I reached into my jacket and slid my tablet across the table. While I was waiting for my flight, I did some digging into our shared accounts and her digital footprint. She didn't just drain my savings. She used your corporate executive card to fund a phantom marketing firm. Holt stared at the tablet. I tapped the screen, pulling up the PDF compilation I had made on the flight. I showed them the airline receipts, the Miami resort charges, the itinerary with Connor's name, and then the real poison, the paper trail. Invoices paid from Fairfax Holdings to an LLC registered to a P.O. box in Delaware. Hundreds of thousands of dollars billed for digital consulting over the last year. She's been embezzling company money to finance his lifestyle, I said, and she moved the bulk of it to an offshore trust yesterday morning. Adele looked like she was going to be sick. She pressed a trembling hand over her mouth. Holt didn't say a word. He just kept swiping through the documents. His face turned a dangerous mottled shade of purple. The veins in his neck stood out against his crisp tuxedo collar. "She told us you hired a special attorney and got the ban lifted," Adele whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "She told us it was a surprise for you. She expensed the legal fees to the company." "She lied," I said softly, "to all of us." Holt finally stopped scrolling. He zoomed in on one of the invoices from the phantom marketing firm. The silence in the room was absolute, save for the faint, muffled bass of the sound system being tested 30 floors below. When Holt finally spoke, his voice wasn't loud. It was a raspy, terrifying whisper. "Ethan, this routing number." He pointed a shaking finger at the screen. "The account she wired this corporate money to." "What is it?" I asked. "It's not just a dummy account," Holt said, his breathing getting shallow. "This is the escrow routing profile for the Southside Development Project. It's heavily regulated. If she pulled commercial funds through this specific channel to hide it." He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a sudden, horrifying realization. "The SEC audit is next month. She didn't just steal from the family. She's exposed the entire firm to federal fraud charges." Adele let out a choked gasp. Before I could ask what that meant for the succession announcement tonight, the heavy glass door of the boardroom clicked open. Megan stepped through. She was wearing a floor-length emerald silk gown, diamonds catching the recessed lighting, her hair pinned up in a flawless, intricate twist. She was holding a clipboard, looking down at a seating chart. "Dad, the mayor's team just asked if." She looked up. She saw me. The clipboard slipped out of her fingers and hit the carpet with a dull thud. All the color drained from her face, leaving her foundation looking like a pale mask. She stared at me, then at the tablet resting on the table between her parents, and finally at Holt's face. "Ethan," she breathed. It barely made a sound. Nobody moved. Downstairs, the muffled bass of the gala band thumped against the floorboards, a surreal heartbeat to the absolute stillness in the room. "Megan," I said. My voice was steady. I was surprised by how steady it was. "How was Miami?" She swallowed hard, her eyes darting back and forth. You could see the gears grinding in her head, the desperate search for a spin, a lie, an angle. She took a step backward, toward the door, like she might just run. "Ethan, why didn't you tell me you were coming back?" She managed, her voice trembling but trying to sound injured. "You scared me. We had an argument on the phone. I was upset." "I shut the door, Megan," Holt said. It wasn't his father voice. It was his boardroom voice. Cold, heavy, final. Megan flinched. She reached behind her and pushed the glass door until it clicked shut, sealing us in. "Dad, whatever he's showing you, he's angry. Because we fought," she started, the words spilling out fast. "He's been out on that rig for months," he stressed. "His brother is." "Did you route Fairfax Holdings vendor payments through the Southside escrow profile?" Holt interrupted. The question hit her like a physical blow. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The injured girlfriend act evaporated instantly. "Did you," Holt repeated, standing up slowly, "authorize corporate funds to an LLC in Delaware under a phantom marketing contract and push the wire through a federally monitored escrow account?" "I." Megan looked at Adele. "Mom, please." Adele couldn't look at her. She was staring at her hands in her lap, crying silently. "Answer me," Holt roared. The glass walls actually shook. I had never heard him raise his voice in 3 years. Never. Megan burst into tears. The real kind this time. Ugly, gasping sobs. "I was going to put it back. I just needed to borrow it to get the trust set up for the tax shelter, I swear. After tonight, when I had full signature authority, I was going to quietly reimburse the Southside account from the discretionary fund. Nobody would have known." Holt slumped back into his chair like his strings had been cut. He rubbed a hand over his face, looking suddenly 10 years older. "You idiot," he whispered. "You absolute, arrogant idiot. Discretionary funds are audited quarterly. Southside is in SEC flag development because of the municipal grants. You didn't just borrow money, Megan. You committed wire fraud. You embezzled from your own family's firm, and you dragged a federal housing grant into it to cover your tracks. It's just paper," Megan pleaded, stepping closer to the table. "Dad, we can fix it. We have the best lawyers in Chicago. We just shuffle it back." "It's fine." "It is not fine," I said. She whipped her head toward me, her face twisting into a mask of pure hatred. "You did this. You couldn't just let me leave. You couldn't just take the hint when I emptied the account. You had to come here and burn everything down. You emptied an account meant to help my brother walk again," I said, leaning forward, "to pay for a trip to Paris with a guy who spots squats for a living. I didn't burn anything down, Megan. I just handed your parents the matches you lit. Ethan is the only reason I'm finding out about this today instead of from a federal subpoena next month," Holt said, his voice dead flat. He picked up his phone from the table. "Dad, what are you doing?" Megan panicked. "I'm calling Sullivan," Holt said. Sullivan was the firm's general counsel. "I have to self-report this immediately to get ahead of the audit. We have to freeze the Southside accounts and initiate an internal investigation." "No." Megan lunged forward, grabbing his wrist. "Dad, stop. The gala is starting. 500 people are downstairs waiting for you to announce me as CEO. The mayor is here. If you call Sullivan now, the transition stops. My career is over. Your career ended the second you signed that first fake invoice," Holt said. He pulled his arm out of her grip with a look of profound disgust. "There is no succession announcement tonight, Megan. There is no CEO title for you. Ever." Adele let out a small, broken sob. Megan stood frozen. The reality of what she had done was finally piercing through the armor of her entitlement. She looked down at the tablet. She saw Connor's name on the airline receipt. "You threw away an $80 million company," I said quietly, "for a gym trainer and a trip you knew I couldn't take. mistake. Before she could scream at me again, the heavy oak doors of the outer suite opened. We could hear footsteps approaching the glass. It was Soren, one of the senior board members, dressed in a sharp tuxedo. He knocked on the glass, smiling broadly, oblivious to the nuclear wasteland inside the room. Holt took a deep breath. He smoothed his tie. He pressed a button under the table to unlock the door. Soren leaned in. Holt, Adele, Megan, the ballroom is packed. They're ready for the Fairfax family entrance. 10 minutes to the speech. He looked at me, a bit confused. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Just wanted to give you the warning. Thank you, Soren, Holt said. His voice was perfectly steady, the mask of a man who had built an empire. We'll be right down. Soren nodded and left, the glass door clicking shut behind him. Holt looked at his wife. Adele, go to the washroom. Fix your makeup. Go down to the VIP table. Adele nodded wordlessly, picking up her purse and slipping out of the room without looking at Megan. Holt turned to his daughter. You are going to walk down those stairs. You are going to sit at the front table. You are going to smile, and you are going to clap. Dad, when I get on that stage, Holt continued, his tone devoid of any warmth, I am going to announce that I am delaying my retirement for another 3 years to oversee our new municipal expansions. I am going to announce that you will be taking an indefinite sabbatical to focus on philanthropic pursuits. You will nod. You will look gracious. Megan was trembling violently now. You're humiliating me in front of the entire city. I am saving you from federal prison, Holt corrected sharply. If you do not do exactly as I say tonight, I will let the sect tear you apart. Do you understand me? Megan couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears ruining her perfectly applied foundation. Holt turned to me. The anger vanished from his face, replaced by a deep, weary sorrow. Ethan, I am so sorry. For all of this. For the money she stole from your brother. For the betrayal. It's not your fault, Holt. I'm wiring $80,000 to Declan's medical trust tomorrow morning, Holt said. Personally. Not from the firm. From me. It's the absolute least I can do. Megan let out a choked noise at that, but Holt ignored her. Thank you, I said. I felt a massive weight lift off my chest. Declan was safe. His therapy was funded. That was all that truly mattered. Stay here as long as you need, Holt said. Or go home. Whatever you want. He walked past Megan without another glance and opened the door. I'm going to pack my things, I said. Holt nodded once, then walked out, heading toward the elevator to face his 500 guests. The boardroom was empty, just me and the woman I was supposed to marry. Megan wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing mascara across her cheek. She looked at me. The entitlement was creeping back in, a desperate defense mechanism to shield her from the ruin she had caused. Are you happy now? She hissed. You got your revenge. You ruined my life. I didn't ruin your life, I said, picking up my tablet and sliding it into my jacket pocket. I just stopped paying for it. I walked past her. Connor loves me, she called out to my back, her voice shaking with pathetic defiance. We're still going to Paris. We're leaving tomorrow. I stopped at the door. I looked back at her. She looked so small, standing alone in her designer gown in the middle of the corporate empire she had just torched. About that, I said. I looked at the booking details while I was on the plane. She narrowed her eyes. What about them? You used the joint account to buy the tickets, I said, but you booked them through the airline portal using my frequent flyer profile because I had the elite status from my domestic rig flights. You wanted the free lounge access and the priority boarding. Megan stared at me, not understanding. So what? So, I said, pulling the glass door open. I'm the primary account holder. I logged in an hour ago. I canceled the tickets. Non-refundable. Her jaw dropped. Have a good time at the gala, Megan. Smile for the mayor. I walked out to the elevator, pressed the button for the lobby, and let the doors slide shut. The lobby was entirely empty now. Everyone had moved into the grand ballroom. I could hear Holt's voice echoing faintly through the heavy double doors, amplified by the sound system. He was making a joke about getting older. The crowd laughed. I walked out through the revolving glass doors and into the cool Chicago evening. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from an unknown number. Ethan, this is Ren from the rig admin office. Supervisor told me you took emergency leave. I was processing your hazard pay release for the month, and something weird just popped up on your file. I stopped walking. The streetlights flickered overhead. What is it? I texted back. The 3 dots appeared. I waited, the cold wind biting through my jacket. The direct deposit bounced back. Ren wrote. The routing number we have on file for you was changed yesterday morning. It wasn't just your joint bank account that got drained. Someone redirected your corporate payroll directly into a Delaware LLC. I stared at the screen. Megan hadn't just taken what we had saved. She had set up a siphon on my income. A siphon that was supposed to fund her life with Connor long after she was gone. Can you freeze the deposit? I typed, my thumbs clumsy from the cold. I already did, Ren replied. But Ethan, the authorization form for the routing change? It wasn't signed by Megan. Who signed it? Your brother, Declan. I read the text 3 times. The words didn't change. I stood on the sidewalk outside the Fairfax building, people in evening wear brushing past me, and I felt the bottom drop out of my stomach. Send me the PDF, I typed back. 30 seconds later, an email hit my inbox. I opened the attachment. It was a standard offshore payroll redirection form, but at the bottom, on the authorization line, was Declan's signature. It wasn't forged. I knew that immediately. It was shaky, the letters jagged and uneven, sloping downward at the end. The exact way he'd written ever since the steering column crushed his C6 vertebra and wrecked the fine motor control in his right hand. Next to his signature was a notary stamp. I tapped the screen, dialing Declan's number. It rang 4 times before he picked up. Ethan? Declan's voice was tired, a little scratchy, but warm. Hey man, I thought you were dark until next week. Megan said the comms array was down. I closed my eyes. The cold wind whipped off Lake Michigan, cutting right through my jacket. Hey Deck, comms are back up. I'm actually on shore for a few days. Listen, I need to ask you something important. Did Megan come see you recently? Yeah, she was just here on Thursday, Declan said, sounding cheerful. Brought me that Italian beef from Al's. Hung out for like 2 hours. She's great, man. You're a lucky guy. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. Did she bring any paperwork with her? Oh yeah, the trust stuff. She said you were setting up a new tax shelter for the rehab clinic payments, so the IRS wouldn't hammer your hazard pay. She said you couldn't print and sign the physical copies on the rig, so she needed me to sign as the primary beneficiary to get the account open. I signed a couple of things. Why? Did the bank mess it up? I couldn't breathe for a second. The sheer calculated cruelty of it was staggering. She didn't just steal my money. She used my disabled brother as the shield to do it. If I went to the police about the stolen rig pay, the paper trail pointed straight to Declan. She made him an unwitting accomplice to wire fraud. Ethan, you there? I'm here, Deck. I forced my voice to stay level and calm. No, the bank didn't mess it up. I just wanted to make sure they processed processed the right forms. Did she bring someone with her to notarize it? Yeah, some guy from her dad's office. Older guy, wore a boatee. Said his name was Whitmore, I think. He just stamped it and left us to eat. Arthur Whitmore was the senior compliance officer at Fairfax Holdings. Megan hadn't just used some random up-store notary. She used a corporate officer from her father's firm to legitimize a fraudulent document under the guise of family business. Okay, listen to me, Deck. Don't sign anything else. If anybody comes by with paperwork, Megan, Whitmore, anybody, you tell them your lawyer needs to see it first. Declan's tone shifted, the cheerfulness dropping into confusion and slight panic. Lawyer? Ethan, what's going on? Is the money gone? Am I getting kicked out of the clinic? No, I said instantly, fiercely. No, you are not getting kicked out. Holt is taking care of the clinic bill personally tomorrow morning. You're safe. I promise you, Declan, you are safe. I just have to sort out some administrative garbage on my end. I'll come see you tomorrow, okay? Okay, he said, still sounding deeply uneasy. Tomorrow I hung up. I stood on the corner of Wacker Drive and looked back up at the skyscraper. The lights of the top floor ballroom were blazing against the night sky. Up there, Holt was probably giving his speech. Megan was probably sitting at the front table, humiliated but still breathing, thinking she had survived the worst of it. She hadn't. I walked 3 blocks to a chain hotel, put a room on my personal credit card, the only piece of plastic I had left that wasn't tied to our joint accounts, and went upstairs. The room smelled like industrial bleach and stale carpet. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. If Megan had leveraged Whitmore to get Declan's signature, then Whitmore was dirty. He was the compliance officer. He was the one who was supposed to catch things like Southside escrow funds being routed to Delaware LLCs. If he was stamping her fake documents, he wasn't just looking the other way. He was helping her build the architecture of the fraud. And if he was helping her, she wasn't acting alone. I opened the password manager again. I had canceled the Paris flights, but I still had access to her email. I hadn't changed her passwords because I wanted to watch what she did next. I searched the inbox for Whitmore. Nothing recent, just standard company-wide memos from 6 months ago. I checked the deleted folder. Emptied. Then I remembered the dummy marketing firm, the Delaware LLC. I had the PDF compilation Holt was looking at, the one I built on the plane. I opened it and zoomed in on the LLC registration details. It was filed by a registered agent service, completely anonymous, but there was a contact phone number listed for billing on the registered agent's invoice. I typed the number into a reverse lookup site. It cost me $2.99 to run the search. The result popped up. It wasn't Megan's number. It wasn't Connor's number. It was registered to a woman named Rosalind Keating. I stared at the name. Rosalind Keating. I knew that name. She was Adele's younger sister, Megan's aunt. My stomach turned over. This wasn't just a spoiled rich girl stealing from her fiancé to run away with a gym trainer. Megan didn't have the brains or the access to bypass SEC-flagged escrow accounts on her own. She was the front, the distraction. I picked up my phone and dialed Holt's personal cell. It went straight to voicemail. He was still at the gala. I left a message. Holt, it's Ethan. Don't go to the SEC tomorrow. Do not self-report the Southside account yet. It's bigger than Megan. Call me the second you get this. I dropped the phone on the bed and rubbed my eyes. I was running on 30 hours without sleep, fueled entirely by black coffee and sheer adrenaline, but my brain wouldn't stop spinning. My phone chimed. A text message. Not from Holt. It was from my own bank. An automated alert. Alert. Your recent request for a $150,000 home equity line of credit on the property located at 442 Sycamore Lane has been approved and funded to your primary checking account. Please verify. I didn't own a house on Sycamore Lane. I didn't own a house at all. Megan and I rented a penthouse. I logged into the banking app. The balance that had been sent 2 hours ago was now sitting at $150,000. Someone had just dumped a massive fraudulent loan into my name. And if the money was sitting in my account, I was the one holding the bag when the federal audit hit. I stared at the 6 figures sitting in my checking account, the blue glow of my laptop screen reflecting in the dark hotel room. $150,000. It looked like a typo. It felt like a trap. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my wallet, pulled out my debit card, and dialed the 24-hour customer service number on the back. Welcome to First National. An automated voice chimed. Please enter your full account number. I typed it in. I navigated the maze of menus, pressing 0 until the system finally gave up and dumped me into the queue for the fraud department. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the tinny hold music for 12 minutes. Outside, the wail of a siren faded down Wacker Drive. Fraud claims. This is Caspian. A tired voice finally answered. Am I speaking with Ethan? Yes. I need to freeze my primary checking account immediately, and I need to report a fraudulent loan disbursement. I heard the clatter of a keyboard. Okay, Ethan. I see a home equity line of credit was funded to your account about 20 minutes ago. You're saying you didn't authorize this? I don't even own a home, I said. I rent an apartment. I want that money reversed. I want the account locked down so nothing can be transferred out, and I need you to tell me what address that loan is attached to. Let me pull up the origination documents, Caspian said. His customer service tone was slipping, replaced by the tight, cautious voice of someone looking at a massive liability. The property is 442 Sycamore Lane, in Highland Park. It shows a joint deed, your name, and a Rosalind Keating. My stomach dropped. I rubbed the bridge of my nose, trying to stave off a headache that was threatening to split my skull. I don't know that address, and I have never signed a deed with that woman. Someone stole my identity to open that line of credit. Okay, I'm placing a hard freeze on the checking account right now, Caspian said. The funds cannot be moved. But Ethan, because this is a secured loan against real estate, and the funds have already cleared the originating bank, I have to pass this to our federal compliance team. They'll reach out to you tomorrow. You're going to need to file a police report. I understand. Thank you. I hung up. I tossed the phone onto the mattress. They weren't just stealing company money. They were laundering it. Megan and Arthur Whitmore pulled the cash out of the SEC-flagged Southside escrow account, pushed it into Rosalind's Delaware LLC, and then what? They needed a way to clean it before it hit their personal accounts. So they forged my name on a property deed with Rosalind, took out a massive loan against it, and dumped the cash into my bank account. Tomorrow, or the next day, Megan would have logged into our joint profile, transferred that $150,000 to an offshore trust, and walked away clean. And when the federal auditors finally came knocking, the paper trail wouldn't point to Megan or Holt or Fairfax Holdings. It would point to me, a guy with a pre-existing federal file for identity theft, suddenly moving 6 figures through real estate loans. And it would point to my disabled brother, who signed the redirection forms for my rig pay. They were going to let me and Declan take the fall for a multi-million-dollar corporate embezzlement ring. My phone buzzed against the bedspread. It was Holt. I answered it on the first ring. Holt, I'm at the hotel bar across the street from the gala, Holt said. His voice sounded like it had been dragged over gravel. It's done. I gave the speech. Told them I was staying on. Told them Megan was taking a step back to focus on charity work. How did she take it? She smiled. She clapped. She left the ballroom the second the dessert plates were cleared and didn't speak to a single person. Holt let out a long, heavy exhale. The board is confused, but Soren bought it for now. I bought us a few days to figure out how deep this rot goes before the SEC audit. You said it was bigger than Megan. You said not to self-report. Are you alone? I asked. Yes. Adele took a town car home. She said she had a migraine. Adele's sister, I said. Rosalind Keating. The silence on the line was absolute. I could hear the faint clinking of glasses in the background of wherever Holt was sitting. What about Rosalind? Holt asked. The warmth was entirely gone from his voice now. The Delaware LLC that Megan wired the Southside money to? It's registered to Rosalind. And 10 minutes ago, $150,000 was dumped into my personal checking account from a home equity loan on a property in Highland Park. A property that is supposedly co-owned by me and Rosalind. I waited for the explosion. I waited for Holt to start yelling, to deny it, to ask how the hell his sister-in-law got involved. Instead, he just breathed out. A slow, ragged sound. Sycamore Lane. You know the house? I bought it for Rosalind 15 years ago, Holt said quietly, after her second bankruptcy. I put it in a family trust to keep her creditors from seizing it. Adele manages the trust. I closed my eyes. The hotel room suddenly felt incredibly small. Holt, I said. Megan had Declan sign fraudulent documents yesterday. She brought someone with her to notarize them. An older guy with a goatee, named Whitmore. Arthur, Holt whispered. Arthur Whitmore is your senior compliance officer. He's the guy who's supposed to catch this stuff. He notarized fake documents for my disabled brother, and he let Megan route federal grant money to Rosalind. Arthur is Adele's godfather, Holt said. His voice was entirely hollow now. A man watching his entire life burn down to the studs. He's been with Fairfax Holdings since before I married into the family. He and Adele, they manage all of Rosalind's finances. They have for decades. It wasn't Megan. Megan was just the idiot taking a cut to fund her lifestyle with a spin instructor. Megan was the convenient distraction. Holt, Megan didn't orchestrate this, I said. She doesn't know how to bypass and SEC-flagged escrow account. She doesn't know how to set up dummy LLCs or forge property deeds. She was just the mule. Adele and Arthur are draining your company, and they were going to use me as the fall guy. No, Holt said, but it lacked any conviction. It was just a reflex. Adele wouldn't. She's my wife, Ethan. She loves this company. She left the boardroom tonight and didn't even look at Megan. She didn't argue with you when you canceled the succession announcement. She just walked out. Because she was in shock. Because she knew that if Megan took over the company, the books would get audited during the transition, and she'd get caught, I countered. Adele wanted you to stay in power, because you trust her. You don't look over Arthur's shoulder. You don't question the family trust. Stop, Holt said sharply. Holt, they used Declan. I'm not going to stop. He didn't reply. I heard him order another drink from the bartender. Where are you staying? He finally asked. The Marriott on Michigan Avenue, room 41. I'm coming over. Don't call anyone else. Don't call the police. I need to see the paperwork. He hung up. I stood up and paced the length of the room. My legs felt stiff from the flight and the cold, but the adrenaline was keeping me wired. I walked over to the small desk, opened the ice bucket, and splashed cold water on my face from the bathroom sink. Someone knocked on the hotel room door. I froze. I looked at the digital clock on the bedside table. It had been less than 3 minutes since I hung up with Holt. He was across town. He couldn't possibly be here yet. The knock came again. 3 sharp, precise raps against the heavy wood. I walked quietly to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Adele. She was still wearing her gala dress, a dark navy sheath, but she had thrown a heavy camel coat over her shoulders. Her makeup was flawless. There were no tears, no trembling hands like I had seen in the boardroom. She stood perfectly still in the sterile hotel hallway, holding a small leather briefcase. I unlatched the chain and pulled the door open. Adele looked at me. Her expression was completely unreadable. Hello, Ethan, she said softly. May I come in? How did you know I was here? You used your personal credit card to book the room, she said, stepping past me without waiting for an invitation. Arthur flagged the charge. We monitor all the accounts, Ethan, even the ones you think are separate. I shut the door but left the chain off. I turned to face her. Adele walked over to the small circular table by the window and set her briefcase down. She unclasped it. Holt thinks I went home, she said, pulling out a thick manila folder. He's sitting in a bar trying to figure out how his daughter could be so stupid. Megan is a fool. She got greedy, and she got sloppy, and she panicked when you showed up. I told her not to book that flight. I told her you would notice. So you knew about Connor. I knew she was restless, Adele said dismissively, not looking up as she arranged a few sheets of paper on the table. Megan has always been easily bored. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're an intelligent young man, Ethan. You survived that rig. You survived the identity theft when you were 20. You're a survivor. What do you want, Adele? She finally looked at me. Her eyes were cold, calculating, and entirely devoid of the maternal warmth she had faked for 3 years. I want you to sign this, she said, tapping a silver pen against the documents. It's an affidavit. It states that you, acting independently, set up the Delaware LLC and the Highland Park loan to cover gambling debts. It states that you leveraged Megan's corporate access without her knowledge to pull the funds from the Southside escrow. I let out a harsh, disbelieving laugh. You're out of your mind. I'm not signing a confession for your embezzlement. It's not a confession, Ethan. It's an insurance policy. Adele leaned forward. If you sign this, you take the blame, but you won't go to prison. Arthur has a judge in the federal circuit who owes him a very large favor. You'll get probation, a fine. We will cover the fine entirely through a shell corporation. And in exchange, she reached into the briefcase and pulled out a cashier's check. She laid it on the table. I didn't have to get close to read the numbers. $500,000. $500,000, Adele said smoothly. Tax-free. Cashable tomorrow. It will pay for Declan's rehab for the rest of his life. It will buy him a house with a wheelchair ramp. It will set you both up permanently. And if I refuse? Adele sighed. It was a practiced theatrical sigh, like a teacher dealing with a slow student. If you refuse, Arthur hits a button on his server. Tomorrow morning, the SEC receives an anonymous tip about the Southside escrow. They raid the offices. And what do they find? They find that the money was routed to a man with a pre-existing federal record for fraud. They find his brother's signature on the routing documents. They find the funds sitting right now in your checking account. She picked up the pen and held it out to me. You can't prove prove I did any of it, Ethan. Megan can't prove it. The paper trail is a circle, and you are standing dead in the center of it. You either take the money and the probation, or you and Declan both go to federal prison for wire fraud. I looked from the check to her face. She wasn't bluffing, and she wasn't angry. She was just negotiating a business deal. To her, my life and my brother's spine were just line items on a spreadsheet. I picked up the check. It was real. Watermarked, stamped, drawn from a private wealth management account I didn't recognize. $500,000. More money than I'd make in a decade on the rig, even with the hazard pay. Why Megan? I asked. My voice was raspy, barely above a whisper. Why let your own daughter take the heat for the Southside escrow? Adele buttoned her camel coat, smoothing the lapels. Megan is impulsive. She was always going to fail at running Fairfax Holdings. Holt was blind to it, but Arthur and I weren't. When she started funneling small amounts to that ridiculous spin instructor, Arthur noticed immediately. But instead of reporting it to Holt, we helped her hide it. We gave her the Delaware LLC structure. We showed her how to bypass the internal audits. You built her a trap, I said, the sick realization settling in my stomach. We built her a sandbox, Adele corrected. She played in it, and we used the same channels to move the real money, the municipal grants, the construction bonds. If the SEC ever looked closely, the trail would lead straight to Megan's amateur embezzlement. She was our firewall. But then you showed up today, and Holt panicked, and the timeline accelerated. Holt is on his way here right now, I said. He knows about Arthur. He knows about Rosalind. Adele didn't even flinch. She picked up her leather briefcase and snapped it shut. Holt is a tired man who drinks too much Macallan and lives in the past. He doesn't understand modern corporate finance, and he certainly doesn't understand me. Let him look at whatever you want. By the time he figures out how to untangle the family trust, Arthur will have already filed the paperwork with the feds. She walked toward the door. You have until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, Ethan. Sign the affidavit, take the check, and go back to your oil rig. Or don't, and watch federal marshals wheel your brother out of his rehab clinic before lunch. She opened the door and walked out into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood alone in the quiet room. The affidavit sat on the table next to the $500,000 check. The silver pen rested on top of the signature line. My hands started to shake. I had survived freezing storms in the Gulf, mechanical failures on the drill deck and 90-foot swells, but this was a different kind of drowning. This was clean, quiet, and legal. I grabbed my phone and dialed the rehab clinic. Oakwood Spinal Recovery. This is Paige. A polite voice answered. Paige, this is Ethan, Declan's brother. Oh, hi, Ethan. Declan is asleep. Did you need me to wake him? No, I said, pacing the length of the carpet. No, let him sleep, but I need you to put a hard lock on his visitor list, starting right now. Nobody gets in to see him. Not Megan Fairfax, not Holt Fairfax, not Arthur Whitmore. Nobody but me. Paige's tone shifted, becoming professional and alert. I can update the security protocol, Ethan, but if his primary benefactor requests access, Holt Fairfax is not his benefactor anymore. I cut in. I am the only authorized contact. If anyone from the Fairfax family or their legal team shows up, you do not let them pass the lobby. You call me, and then you call the police. Understood, Paige said quietly, locking the file now. I hung up. I barely had time to put the phone in my pocket before the knock came at the door. Heavy, frantic. I checked the peephole. It was Holt. He had taken off his tuxedo jacket and loosened his bow tie. He looked exhausted, his face gray under the harsh hallway lights. I unlatched the chain and let him in. He walked past me, running a hand through his thinning hair. I tried to call Arthur. He's not answering his cell. He wasn't at the reception either. Soren said he left early. Holt stopped. He saw the table, the check, the affidavit. He walked slowly toward the window and looked down at the documents. He didn't touch them. He just read the bold heading at the top of the page. Sworn affidavit of admission. Adele was just here, I said, leaning against the doorframe. She brought me a severance package. $500,000 to take the fall for the Southside embezzlement. She said Arthur hits the button at 8 a.m. Holt reached out with a trembling hand and picked up the check. He stared at the signature line. It was drawn on a private wealth account from First National. This account, Holt whispered. His breathing was shallow. This isn't a Fairfax Holdings account. This is Adele's personal trust. She said Megan was just a firewall. She and Arthur let Megan steal to cover their own tracks. Holt dropped the check back onto the table. He looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked truly terrified. Ethan, you froze the loan they put in your name, right? The one on Sycamore Lane? Yeah, I called the bank an hour ago. The funds are locked. You have to unfreeze them. I stared at him. Are you out of your mind? It's a fraudulent loan. If I unfreeze it, it looks like I'm accepting the money. If you freeze a secured line of credit for suspected fraud, the bank automatically pulls the property deed for a manual title review, Holt said, his voice rising in panic. They look at the origination documents. They look at the county records. Ethan, what was the exact address Caspian gave you? 442 Sycamore Lane, I said. Holt grabbed the edge of the table. His knuckles turned white. 15 years ago when Rosalind went bankrupt, I bought her a house to keep her off the street. I put it in a blind family trust so her creditors couldn't touch it. But I didn't buy 442 Sycamore Lane. What do you mean? I bought 440, Holt said. The house next door. I didn't understand. Why does that matter? Because 442 Sycamore Lane is a commercial parcel, Holt said, his eyes wide. It's an empty lot. It sits directly over the municipal water main for the Highland Park District. The city has been trying to buy that parcel for eminent domain for a decade, but the owner of record kept blocking the sale through anonymous shell companies. The pieces started to click together in my head, cold and heavy. Adele and Arthur bought the lot next door with the Southside escrow money, I realized. They used Rosalind as the registered owner. They've been holding the city hostage for municipal leverage, and they used my name on the deed to secure the loan. They didn't just use your name, Ethan, Holt said. If the bank's compliance team pulls that deed tomorrow morning, they're going to see your signature on a commercial property that's currently under federal investigation for municipal extortion. The SEC audit on my company is just the tip of the iceberg. They're pinning a federal racketeering charge on you. I felt the blood drain from my face. Adele hadn't just built a trap. She had built an execution chamber. Can we call the bank back? I asked, grabbing my phone. Cancel the freeze? It's too late. The manual review process is automated overnight. By tomorrow morning, the deed goes to the federal compliance desk. Holt started pacing the small room, his heavy shoes sinking into the cheap carpet. Arthur knows this. That's why Adele gave you until 8 a.m. She wants you to sign that affidavit confessing to the wire fraud, because a confession to the lesser crime derails the racketeering investigation. It wraps everything up in a neat little bow. If I sign it, I go to prison for the wire fraud. If you don't sign it, Holt said grimly, you go to prison for extortion. And they dragged Declan down as an unindicted co-conspirator because he signed the routing forms. I looked at the silver pen sitting on the table. It looked like a weapon. There has to be a paper trail proving Arthur notarized those forms fraudulently, I said. Declan's physical therapy records. He was at the clinic. He doesn't have the motor control to sign a legally binding commercial deed. Arthur is a corporate notary. He keeps a ledger, Holt said. A physical leather-bound ledger of every document he stamps. It's required by state law. If we can get that ledger, we can prove he backdated the property deed in the routing forms. Where is it? In his office. At Fairfax Holdings. On the executive floor. I looked at my watch. It was 1:15 a.m. The building is locked down after midnight, I said. Security patrols the lobby. I'm the CEO, Holt said, his voice hardening. The panic was receding, replaced by the ruthless pragmatism of a man who had spent 40 years crushing corporate rivals. My keycard bypasses the lockdown. The night guards answer to me. If we walk in there, Arthur will know. There are cameras. The security server archives locally at 3 low am, Holt said. If we pull the ledger before then, I can wipe the drive. But Arthur's office is biometrically sealed. I don't have his thumbprint. I don't either, Holt. Holt looked at me. No, but Megan does. She was sleeping with him. I stared at him. The sheer absurdity of it knocked the air out of my lungs. Arthur Whitmore is in his 70s, I said. He's your wife's godfather. I know, Holt said, his voice completely dead. I found out an hour ago. Soren pulled me aside at the bar. He said he saw them together in a suite at the Drake 2 weeks ago. He thought I should know before the succession announcement. He thought Megan was just sleeping her way to favorable compliance audits for her division. He didn't know about the money. It all clicked. Connor, the spin instructor, wasn't the mastermind, and he wasn't the primary affair. Connor was just a dumb, well-built distraction she could parade around Miami. Someone who would carry boxes and take pictures and ask zero questions about where the money came from. Arthur was the real betrayal. Arthur was the one giving her the keys to the kingdom, showing her how to bypass the internal controls. And Adele knew. She knew her daughter was sleeping with an old man to steal corporate funds, and she used that exact blind spot to run a massive municipal extortion scheme right under everyone's noses. Where is she? I asked. She went back to your apartment, Holt said, to pack. We left the hotel room immediately. The drive to the penthouse took 10 minutes. The streets of Chicago were completely empty, the streetlights reflecting off the black asphalt. We didn't say a word in the cab. When we got to the building, my key fob still worked. We took the elevator up to the top floor. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The apartment was a disaster. Designer clothes were thrown across the velvet sofa. 2 massive Rimowa suitcases were open on the hardwood floor, half filled with shoes and handbags. Megan was standing in the kitchen, still in her emerald gown, aggressively shoving a stack of jewelry boxes into a leather tote. Connor was nowhere to be seen, probably back in his own apartment, completely unaware that his golden ticket was currently imploding. Megan froze when she saw us. Her eyes darted from my face to her father's. Dad, she started, her voice defensive and sharp. I'm leaving. You told me to step back, so I'm stepping back. I'm going to Paris. Holt didn't yell. He didn't even look angry anymore. He just looked at her with a profound, terrifying pity. Your mother was just at Ethan's hotel, Holt said, walking slowly into the kitchen. She offered him $500,000 to sign a sworn affidavit confessing to wire fraud. She's pinning the entire Southside embezzlement on him. Megan scoffed, though her hands were shaking. Good, he deserves it. He ruined everything tonight. She isn't just pinning the wire fraud on him. Megan, Holt continued, his voice barely above a whisper. She bought the municipal lot on Sycamore Lane with the stolen escrow funds. She used Roslyn as the front, and she forged Ethan's signature on the commercial deed to take out a fraudulent loan. They're under federal racketeering investigation. And tomorrow morning, when the SEC looks at the paperwork, they're going to find your signature on the internal transfers, and Ethan's signature on the real estate. Megan stopped moving. The jewelry box in her hand slipped and clattered onto the marble island. What? She breathed. Your mother and Arthur didn't help you hide your little slush fund because they loved you, I said, stepping up next to Holt. They helped you because they needed a firewall. If the feds ever raided the building, they would find your fake marketing firm and stop looking. You were going to take the fall for a multi-million-dollar extortion ring, Megan. You and me both. No, Megan said, shaking her head rapidly. No, Arthur wouldn't do that. Arthur loves me. We have a plan. We're setting up the offshore accounts together. Arthur is Adele's godfather, Holt said. The words hit the room like stones. He has managed Roslyn's trusts for 30 years. He has managed your mother's private wealth for 30 years. You are a disposable asset to them. You are the idiot daughter who thought she was playing the game, while they used you to dig your own grave. Megan stared at him. Her breathing went shallow and fast. She looked at me, then back at her father. She realized we weren't lying. She realized the depth of the trap she had walked blindly into, thinking she was the smartest person in the room. She collapsed against the marble island, burying her face in her hands. She didn't cry. It was a dry, hollow sound, like the air being let out of a tire. I need to get into Arthur's office, Holt said, standing over her. I need his notary ledger. It's the only way to prove he backdated the property deeds and the routing forms for Declan. The door is biometrically sealed. I know you enrolled your thumbprint on the lock so you could visit him after hours. Megan didn't look up. She just nodded slowly against her hands. Get your coat, Holt said. 20 minutes later, the 3 of us were standing in the basement parking garage of the Fairfax Holdings building. Holt used his executive key card to bypass the night elevators, taking us straight to the compliance floor. The building was dead quiet, save for the low hum of the massive vac system. The fluorescent lights flickered on automatically as we walked down the carpeted hallway. We stopped in front of a heavy oak door at the end of the corridor. A small black biometric scanner pulsed with a faint red light next to the handle. Megan stood in front of it. She looked completely hollowed out. The emerald gown was wrinkled, her hair falling out of its intricate twist. She pressed her right thumb against the glass pad. The light flashed green. The heavy deadbolt clicked back with a solid mechanical thud. Holt pushed the door open and hit the lights. Arthur's office was meticulous. Dark wood, leather chairs, walls lined with thick binders of corporate regulations. Holt walked straight past the desk to a heavy fireproof filing cabinet in the corner. It was unlocked. He pulled open the top drawer and lifted out a thick black leather-bound book, the state notary ledger. Holt laid it on the desk and opened it. He flipped past pages of neat handwritten entries, scanning the dates. I stood next to him, watching his finger trace down the columns. Here, Holt breathed. He pointed to an entry dated 3 days ago. Next to the date was Declan's name, my name, and the routing numbers for the Delaware LLC. But the entry was sandwiched between 2 other lines dated from 3 weeks prior. He squeezed it in, I said. And here, Holt flipped back a few pages. The Sycamore Lane deed, dated 6 months ago but logged between 2 entries from last Tuesday. He's been leaving blank lines in his physical ledger to backdate fraudulent documents for Adele. Holt closed the heavy book. He tucked it tightly under his arm. He looked at Megan, who was standing awkwardly by the door, hugging her coat around herself. Go to the airport, Holt told her. The finality in his voice was absolute. Get on that flight to Paris. Don't come back to Chicago. If you stay here, I won't be able to protect you from the federal indictments. Megan opened her mouth, tears finally spilling over her eyelashes. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Go, Megan. She turned and walked out of the office. We didn't follow her. We just listened to the sound of her heels fading down the long, empty hallway until the elevator doors chimed and swallowed her up. Holt looked at me. It's 3 a.m. I'm driving straight to Sullivan's house. I'm waking up the general counsel, and we are going to the FBI field office the second the sun comes up. We're handing them the ledger, the Southside transfers, and the evidence of Adele's trusts. We are self-reporting everything before Arthur can hit his button at 8. What happens to the company? I asked. The company survives, Holt said grimly. Adele and Arthur do not. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his checkbook. He walked over to Arthur's desk, clicked a pen, and wrote out a check. He tore it out and handed it to me. It was for $80,000. For Declan, Holt said. Deposit it the second your bank opens. The hold on your checking account will be cleared by this afternoon once Sullivan files the police report proving your signature was forged on the Sycamore loan. I took the check. I folded it carefully and put it in my jacket pocket. Thank you, Holt. Don't thank me, Ethan. I let this rot fester in my own house. He walked to the door and looked back at me one last time. You're a good man. You always were. Get back to the water. It's cleaner out there. I didn't stay in the hotel. I went straight to the hospital. I sat in the waiting room of Oakwood Spinal Recovery as the sun came up over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in pale, bruised colors of purple and gray. At 8 a.m., my phone didn't ring. There was no alert from the bank. There was no call from the marshals. At 8:30 a.m., Paige unlocked the double doors to the inpatient wing and smiled at me. I walked into Declan's room. He was already awake, eating a cup of awful hospital pudding, watching a sports recap on the small wall-mounted television. Ethan, his face lit up. He tried to sit forward, wincing slightly as the brace caught his shoulders. You look like hell, man. Did you sleep at all? Not much, I said, pulling up a plastic chair next to his bed. I had to sort out some administrative garbage. Did you get it fixed? I patted my jacket pocket, feeling the crisp fold of Holt's check. Yeah, it's fixed. Everything is fully funded. You don't have to worry about a thing. Awesome. Declan grinned, relaxing back into the pillows. So, where's Megan? She coming by? I looked out the window. Down on the street, normal people were walking to work, holding coffee cups, completely unaware of the empire that had just quietly burned to the ground overnight. I thought about Adele, waking up in her massive house, realizing her trap had been dismantled. I thought about Arthur, walking into his office to find his life's work missing from the fireproof cabinet. I thought about Megan, sitting in a first-class seat somewhere over the Atlantic, entirely alone. No, I said, turning back to my brother. Megan had to take a trip. It's just us now. Declan nodded, not questioning it. Just us is good. 2 days later, I was standing on the helipad of the deepwater rig. The familiar deafening roar of the drill deck vibrated up through the soles of my boots. The wind off the Gulf of Mexico was freezing, tasting of salt and diesel exhaust. I walked over to the railing and looked down at the black, churning water. There were no borders out here. No ledgers, no trusts, no lies. Just the work, the cold, and the quiet. I took a deep breath, pulled my heavy gloves on, and went back to work.